Welcome to the material that we call armor-plated within our curriculum. I'm Mark Hadmaker. You probably already know that if you've picked up this DVD. Corey Hayes, you've probably seen this before in many things. How are we doing today, Corey?
Good.
As if we just met. Here we go. What we're doing with this particular piece of material is we're not training you necessarily how to do anything offensive. There will be some offensive shots in here, but primarily it's pretty much what it says. We're trying to show you how to actually, it's true self-defense. We're trying to pick off every unarmed shot there is. We're trying to stop off every punch we can think of, elbow shots, knee shots, headbutts, some kicks. We need some pick-offs in here. So some of these defensive ideas we're using are actually going to be offensive in nature as well. But the whole key subject this entire time is making sure that you can stay covered up. Now, these are ideas that you can use in NHB, in boxing, straight kickboxing, or on the street. Now, with that said, it should probably come as no surprise, since we're Western martial arts enthusiasts, that we use boxing as the striking base because, you know, from our way of thinking, it's just the superior way to go.
That's where the fight starts, man.
So with that said, we're going to go ahead and start out showing you a standard boxing base. We're not trying to show you how to box within this particular piece of material by any stretch of the imagination. If you want to do that, run to our previous material or other titles like Extreme Boxing and, you know, get some more of that ground floor to actually learn how to throw some of these punches. So when you see us throwing some shots in here, I wouldn't use this material to learn how to throw a jab, throw some of the kicks or the elbows. We'll give you a few of the nuance ideas, but for the most part, you have to look to that previous material. Here we're just trying to make sure you understand how not to get hurt when these things are being tossed at you. Now, some of the main ideas, since we are working out the boxing base, talk a tiny bit about stance, because again, that's on other material. But stancing, you do want to make sure for defense, you have to have your hands up the entire time. You're going to make sure you're facing your opponent, because it's very common to see people when they're facing each other, they're actually not really facing. They'll have, to truly face, you've got to imagine there's a little spike coming out of your sternum looking directly onto your opponent. Now, Corey and I are facing at this time. When you start seeing these shoulders dipped away, or even worse, people all the way in these side stances, we no longer have facing going on. It's going to be really hard to defend yourself from here, let alone the fact we've addressed earlier. It's very easy to telegraph what your offensive ideas are going to be from here, because Corey knows at this point, if I'm standing all the way like this, everything's going to be pretty much a lead fighter. If I'm going to throw anything from the rear, I'm going to have to turn this shoulder in, or I'm going to be looking for some sort of spinning motion here. So I want to have a straight-on orientation. The chest is directly through, the shoulders are squared up, the hips are squared up. That doesn't mean you can't have this lead knee cocked in a little bit, being prepared to get some groin shots. But for the most part, keep in mind, when we're doing stances, we're talking something static and theoretical, because a fight just isn't Corey and I going, throwing everything right here. There's going to be lots of movement. Footwork has a lot to do with being able to have a good defensive structure. You have to have some mobility. Again, we cover all the footwork ideas on the Extreme Boxing. Don't despair. There's tons of defensive ideas on here, but keep in mind, for all of the true stancing, all the true shelling up, all the footwork ideas, go to the previous material. But just the small review is, you got to be facing on. If you're in the outside range to some degree, you're always going to have that rear hand up, touching the cheek. Lead hand is up, probably about a foot in front of the lead shoulder, a little bit down. Your chin is going to be down. So from the front position, we're here. The elbows are parallel. We don't have these flared out. I'm exaggerating this a little bit right here. See this inverted V. If I'm standing like this, Corey knows that we've got the liver open, solar plexus. Those are the shots to take. We got to bring in these elbows to the parallel position. Now, we move to the end fight, you're going to bring both hands back into the face. So, from the outside range, we're here in the profile, end fight, start pulling everything back in. You notice we start hunching up the shoulders a little bit more. Now, a few other little basic ideas before we get down to the nuts and bolts of how to pick off some specific tools. You notice you've always got to keep your eyes on your opponent. If we're standing here and Corey's fighting, you'll see some people do this look away, trying to use the peripheral. You're never going to have nearly as quick a reaction when you're trying to fight off at the peripheral. It seems okay in theory whenever you're standing back here probably playing some kind of high kick or spinning kick game, but this isn't really where the fight's going to go on. We're talking about an all-out NHB fight where we've got to monitor this guy can be throwing some kicks, some punches, he can be shooting. You really don't know what the hell's going to go on at this point, so we've got to have our eyes on this guy. Now, you will diffuse your vision to some point. Like, I can't be locking my eyes in on Corey's ringside label and start falling in love with whatever the 800 phone number is on this thing, or look at the logo of his shirt, or notice maybe there's a thread on his shirt somewhere. I've got to be looking him towards the chest. I will be using some peripheral at this point, but it's not this extreme peripheral. So I'm always facing in on him, Corey's facing in on me. We're in a pretty tight position. Also, you got to keep that chin down the entire time. A lot of people come in, you see this still, even in UFC competitions, you see people come in with this chin up. It's just crazy. You don't know what's going on. If they would watch some standard boxing, they see, you know, this is anathema. You just can't be doing this. Also need to say at this point, when you occasionally see me looking off to the left, There's a wealth of material here. I want to make sure you understand to keep it honest. I want to stay in the same page with you guys. We're going through, make sure it's in a logical order. We do have notes off to the side, so make sure when you see that going off over here, it doesn't mean we're not interested in you. Make sure we're on the same page. Again, we got that chin down. Keep the mouth closed. Easier said than done. Everyone starts out this way. Everyone looks good with the mouth closed except me because I'm talking all the damn time. But as soon as you start throwing the first few punches, the adrenaline comes in. I don't care what your fitness level is. As soon as you're in there throwing those punches, that mouth starts hanging open. And that's the surest way to start looking for someone to break that jaw. I mean, it happened to Ali. He had his mouth open, not because he was winded, but that first round with Kenny Norton, because he was talking some trash, which he did all the time, but Kenny monopolized on that, well, capitalized on it at that time. So chin down, shoulder up, you have to keep that mouth closed. And all through this DVD, you'll notice that I will probably not have my mouth closed the entire time, so ignore my example. Now, we got to talk about your offensive-defensive ratio. This kind of follows an economic principle, the Pareto principle. We're going to have, when you're doing your offense-defense, as we said before in extreme boxing, 80% of your offense is going to be done off of your lead hand. You're primarily throwing your jabs off of this hand. You've got your lead hooks. This hand is doing most of the work because it's the closest thing to your opponent. Most of your defense needs to be done off of the rear hand. So the ratio is going to be, usually if we were just talking straight boxing, you being offensive, you do 80% of your offense with this lead hand and 20% of the offense with the rear hand. Now, we got to flip this over for the defense. This rear hand is all important. This is 80% of your defense is going on right here. 20% will be with this lead hand. Now the reason for this, if we're tying up this lead hand, like if Corey, freeze a jab out there for me please, sir. If I'm using this lead hand cuff, which we will have this sort of material in here because you get a training for all contingencies, but if I make this my first and foremost answer for a jab, I'm tying up a lead hand that I could have been using for an offensive shot. I'm tying this up, I've made myself predictable. He's going to start bringing some things down over the top or down the pipe. I've tied this hand up and I could have used this for some offense. Yeah, it can work. I can't cuff and come right off this thing, but it's all the sweeter if he throws the jab. I stick it and have one in his face at the same time. Sorry for the contact. But we shouldn't have had it going yet. That's for later on. But we see that's sweeter to be there at the same time than a 1-2. Think of fighting should always be like golf. You want the lesser the score, the better off you are. So if I have to do 1-2, that doesn't beat. He throws out a single motion with both hands involved at the same time, with this one taking the lion's share of the defense. Also, the next principle we want to have is you're going to always be moving. Now, we're not going to be moving around nearly as much as we actually would if we were playing a stand-up fight right now, because you're going to have lots of mobility. There's going to be lots of footwork. Corey and I would be moving the entire time. We're never going to come out and go, you want to throw some punches? Yeah, I guess so. And move around this little bit right here. We've got to be moving around the entire time, trying to figure out, I don't know if he's going to be shooting. I don't know what the hell he's going to be doing. The same thing with him. And if we're staying this one range, we're just making it easier on each guy to get hit or allow him to hit us. I should say one thing we're doing this armor plated, we're not really addressing stopping up the takedown in this particular portion because, again, that's not a strike. We've got other material that covers that. But when you're using that mobility, it's another thing that goes a long way towards stopping the shoot, is if you're always on the outside range, able to read when to sprawl, when to bull post, your mobility is the key to that. If he's throwing the kicks, it's easier for me to see these kicks from these outside ranges. The more mobility we have, the better. Now, so while we're doing this, you won't see us running all over the mat, dancing like we probably should be, but keep in mind that principle should be there the entire time. Another principle that should always be there with your mobility is long and short rhythm. The rhythm's only, you're moving your head about one head length. When we're in the outside range, which is right about here, we're not necessarily in punching range, close enough. We're not sure if one little half step in, the punch could be there. Now, when you're moving, you want to take, for a long rhythm, which is done in the outside range, you're in the long range, you're taking your head, your entire body, back and forth one head length. Notice it's just not the head movement, and whenever I'm moving, I'm not leaving my hands behind. So as Corey's staying in that long rhythm the entire time, back and forth, he's moving, he's in the outside range. The reason he's doing that, he's making it harder for me to find where the range of the punch is. It doesn't seem like much, but anyone who's actually thrown some punches gets the idea. Just a little bit of change all the time makes it harder for someone to track you down. Now, when you start moving closer to the inside range, you got to move this off to short rhythm, which is side to side. Same thing, Corey takes his hands with him. It's one head length. Notice he's not giving you this exaggerated all the way back and forth. This has a tendency to weight the legs up too much. You get all your weight over here, and if you get all, let's say if you get about 80% of your weight on this leg is light, it's a perfect leg to shoot in on at that time. It's this leg's even better. The leg that has the weight on it, you throw the kick on that one because this quad is all tensed up. So again, one head length Make it short, make it fast. Think Joe Frazier whenever you're going side to side.
Hard to hit.
Very hard to hit. Until Foreman finally stopped it. That was beautiful, though. The other thing you want to keep in mind is after every time you do a defensive reaction, return to guard immediately. We see lots of people with lazy defense. For example, I'll play the lazy defensive role. Corey throws a jab, and I'll catch it. We know this is where I've already told you you're supposed to be. Long range, I'm here. Short range, I'm here. But you'll see this. He'll throw a jab, catch. See what I just did? It's very common. Corey sees this all the time whenever he's running his own seminars and classes. People will do a nice defensive motion, and they forget to follow up after it, and then they open everything up. It can be with other vert. He could throw that jab, and I could cuff, and I leave this hand over here. Throw again, I could cuff with this hand, I start leaving the hand to this side. Everything should be always, he throws, here, right back in, here, back in, right back into the same position. It's kind of like whenever people are learning to type, use a keyboard, they talk about having your hands on the home row position. You got to bring your fingers right back in those same keys. Or we also call it making a cage, like this is that long cage, this is the short cage. If you're moving around, have your feet or your training partner say cage it up or make a cage. That means get your hands back in position. So if I see Corey, I'm feeding Corey punches, I see him actually getting lax. Okay, make a cage, and bring it back up. And what you've got to do, if he's forgetting, you sometimes give them a nice little short shot, even if you're just holding the focus pads to remind them to get himself back into a nice defensive position. One major thing, this is really hard to do, is you do not want to lean away from shots. It's a very visceral reaction. Like if Corey all of a sudden swings a roundhouse at me right now, this seems like common sense. And this is actually one of those things that's it's counterintuitive to trying to tell someone, no, you're going to have to stay there. Leaning away from a punch does you several disservices. One, while I'm leaning away, this leg is now light. While he's swinging that punch, it might be time for him to shoot low on me because this leg is light as can be. He can pick this up in a snatch single, low single, or just a high single. I'm on my ass, taking the fight down to the ground. And usually the guy who scores the takedown, it's usually going to be his fight. The other thing we've got, if I'm leaning away from a punch, I've got no place to go but back. If he's throwing the next shot, he can just keep wailing into me and run me across the room. Also, if I'm leaning back and away from a punch, I've got a long way to go to come back into an offensive position. He's going to be able to read that before I get there. Also, I've got this long way to go and he can read it. I'm going to step right back into a shot. So if he throws a shot and I'm doing this, by the time I get back, he can see that. This is going to be a hellacious shot because it's going to be like, head-on
coming off the ropes or something.
There you go, head-on collision at that point. So if you're going to move back, you got to move the whole body. You don't lean back. You have to use a step back. We'll be getting into some of that. But keep in mind, always, if you got to move back a little bit, I mean, we're talking about some leans okay, one head length, like in long rhythm, out, right back in. But these long leans, no good. The other thing to keep in mind, even though we're working on just defense within this armor-plated material right now, is we're not really talking about returning with anything yet. But you've got to keep first and foremost, one of the best defenses is to be offensive the entire time. So even though we're not talking about returning anything with some trigger punching or trigger striking material at this time, keep in mind, every time someone throws something, it's a good idea to be right on top of it and throwing something right back. Now, initially, when you're working this material, work it with the round system. Break it down into 3-minute rounds. For example, say Corey would be throwing a jab and I'd be working one particular piece of material. We'll flip that around. I'll throw the jab for him while he works it. The next time around, we'll have a 3-minute round. He throws the jab once, I defend, I return the entire time. But in a real fight, you don't want to be just a defensive player. So I don't want to be out here every time Corey's throwing a jab and I go, look how successful I am about stopping these punches up. This is no good. Every time he's throwing, in the real fight, you got to think about every time you feel something and you've covered up from it, every time you feel yourself throw something or stop something up, that should be a trigger for you to launch something back. It's so much easier for him to get some offense off if I'm just covering up. I mean, that would be Corey's dream right now. If he just keeps throwing and I'm going, oh shit. Just a punching bag at this point. So if I throw something back, even if it's light, it stops up your rhythm at that time. Hell, you do it all the time with some big ways, like Ken. Ken comes in, wells up, you stick a jab right at the middle or an uppercut. Also, don't use both hands to block punches. This is very common. You see, give me a swing of either side. You'll see this kind of thing right here. Now, again, it seems like a good idea intuitively because you're going to go, well, if one stops it, this has got to be even better because this guy's trying to take my head off. The thing is, you've committed too much. You put all your eggs in one basket. We're over here at this time. just ignoring the fact that this one could be coming in at the same time. Also, by committing both here, I don't have a shot really to come back. I mean, yeah, maybe I can come back with a little bit of a pivot or a hacksaw. No, but also we've broken down our golf score thing. It'd be better off to go off the one. When we commit both hands on a single defensive motion, actually, it's too much. You don't have time to get your counter punching. You don't have time to go right back on the offense. And also, you've committed both hands. You've got your hands faked out of a good defensive position whenever he's going to come right over the top.
Open.
Right here. So let's have that swing again. Bang. I should be covered up. I won't have time to do that if both hands are committed. I need to be doing this here, covered. I'm already in the cover. So think about a single hand. Now, there's going to be a portion in this material where we break that rule. We come into the kicking area. It's going to be a couple of the kicks we actually use both arms to stop something up because we're talking with a little bit more of a powerful weapon. But it doesn't always have to be the case. But for almost every other strike you're going to be blocking up, one arm, one hand should be able to take care of it. Also, you got to keep in mind when you are using defense, you want to reach for everything. I mean, you don't want to have to go to the shot. If he's punching at you from a distance, and you actually see this with the beginning fighters, they're throwing jabs out here, doing this sort of stuff. But also the amateur move is if Corey's out there being nervous and throwing those, my amateur move would be reaching out and going, yeah, look at all these punches, I'm stopping. These punches are not near me. There's nothing to worry about. I worry about whenever I think they're about at the 10 to 8 inch range right here. So whenever he's throwing a punch, if it's right around here, I got to learn, now this is okay. This is okay. If it comes in a little bit tighter, that's where I want it to be. I only want my hands to travel about 8 to 10 inches from my body to get there. Now, you're not always going to be able to hold that rule. Maybe sometimes in the chaos of it, you reach up and there's a longer cuff with whatever's going on. But it's best if you can think of your hands having a little bit of, so you've got some cables in your wrist where you get stopped about a 10-inch range outside of your body. Reaching too far just opens too much of the torso, too much of the head. One last concept for your defense where we're moving all these things around. When you're doing a defensive game or defensive drills or you decide, hey, let's put the gear on, Corey, I'm going to play defense the entire time, or even if we're just sparring, what you've got to learn to do to realize you've chosen this game, you're going to have to get your emotions out of it to some degree. Whenever you do get hit, just accept that's part of the game. Okay, you can't get mad about it. You're just going to have to, even if he's getting really successful about it, even if I meant to counter punch off this guy, let's go real slow. He's throwing a sand over here, and let's say this comes over the top and eats me, and I can't get a punch teed off on this guy the entire time. If I get mad, I'm going to have nothing to give to him. My offense, my defense.
Be burning energy too.
There you go. It's going to go to shit. It's going to go out the window. What I've got to do is, if possible, is to step back from this guy, settle myself down. And even at that step back, it's not necessarily a physical step back, which it can be. He can be throwing a lot, and I'm going to actually come back out and go, okay, shit, I got to move around for a minute and set my mind. But it can also just be mentally reminding yourself he's throwing some stuff, and I can't get away from him. Sometimes it might be to shell up for a moment, get a breather while you're in here, and it might be a short breather. It could be something as short as, I'm taking shit, and come back and realize, okay, I got to throw. I can't ever be mad at my partner. I can't be mad at my opponent. Got to relax and go back to the training. But sometimes it's hard. You can get clipped with a good shot. A little flare of anger or a little bit of adrenaline makes you think, well, I'm going to do this. I mean, I got to get crazy with this shit.
Just thinking about being mad instead of concentrating.
You got it. You see people get into that little gorilla tough man swing. They come in there. Everyone starts out in some...
like Robbie Lawler.
There you go. People start out looking good in that stance, and then they get hit with the punch, and then they start moving off in this sort of shit right here. You've got to realize the punch comes in, acknowledge it was a good one, settle down, and then get to work. Now, I've talked long enough. I've told you some basic principles to keep in mind. Hopefully I don't have to go back. We won't go back over and keep saying, hey, keep your hands up, all this. You've already heard this from us. From here on out, it's nothing but straight technique. And again, try and run all these things through the round system where you got 3 ways to go. 1 3-minute round, Corey throws at me, I do the move. 1 3-minute round, I throw at Corey, he does the move. 1 3-minute round where Corey and I are throwing the move in alternating fashion. Then eventually you're going to build where you've got all these things together, then you're right back in the middle of the fight. Again, take that previous material extreme boxing, tie those together so you got your offensive and your defense work being married up. Should work out perfectly. We're going to take a look at how to defend the high jab. Again, we're not talking about all the mechanics of throwing the jab properly. I'm not going to say that anymore. We're not showing you how to throw these shots, just how to stop these shots coming in. So, high jab, anything coming at the head. First and foremost, you've got the catch. That's going to be the primary one that you probably use, that in a stone wall. So when the catch comes in, going to open up your rear hand, allow it to land into the palm of the hand. So Corey throws his jab, hand comes out about 8 to 10 inches in front of my face. Puts it right here. Keep in mind, when we're throwing these things for drill, there's a tendency that people want to start throwing at the hand. They go, hey, let's do a jab catch drill, Corey. And I do this, and he hits it, and he opens up for me, and we're moving around. And nobody's served well by this at all. You got to tell your partner, right here, right here. Go ahead. Here, I return. Here, here. Now, we're going to slow this down. Something small is going on here. One thing that is not going on is taking it down. This is very common in some circles, and I'm going to tell you, demonstrate what I mean very slowly. He throws it out. You see this motion right here? This cuff down. I'm not a fan of this at all, because here's what Corey's going to show you. Yeah. Bang. Right over the top. I've given him this line. Even if I cover up here, I've opened up this line. Let's say I pat this down, Corey comes back over the top with a lead hook on it. Bang. This isn't looking good for me. So just with control, I'm going to few with speed. Don't hurt.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Good shot. Wow. Son of a bitch. Go ahead. Bang. It's coming in because I'm patting this thing down. What you want to do is go with the reverse of this, is whenever it comes in and I land it, I'm just not patting into this. I go slightly up at a 45-degree angle. I'm not going into it, up at a 45, and I'm only moving my hand about 3 inches. Now what this does is it takes his momentum off. Even if he was throwing a second jab, if I'm just patting into it, first just throw a double jab in the air, Corey. Bang, bang. If I'm just patting that first jab and he's throwing a second jab, I've actually helped him on his negative motion. Double jab, bang. If I give him 45 and up, we're up. I take his neuromuscular groove off a little bit, and I've also put this vertical shell of the forearm in the elbow in front for whatever the next shot might be. So slowly up, up. It's very ever so slightly up here. Now we're going to trade them back and forth at a light level. Go ahead. Bang, bang, up, 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 up. It's almost fun. Bang, bang, bang. All right, also to defend against this high jab, you've got the cuff. Now the cuff that's coming in, it's also called a parry, so you can use these interchangeably, is instead of me going directly into the fist, I'm coming to the outside. Why is the catch preferable? Because the hand's in front of it. The cuff is, I don't have any idea why you would choose to move from here comes a punch, to go to the outside. There's too much motion right there. So why do we have the cuff? Because you have no choice really where your hands are in relationship to the fight. My hand could be here, this is coming in, I don't have time to get this hand in front. So keep in mind, we're going to work where your hands are at the time, but hopefully they're always back here in the cage position. All right, when this cuff comes in, it's just not me slapping it. I'm not going down, I'm not slapping across, because again, slapping across takes me out of position right here. This one is over the top, bang, with a little bit of speed, no hurting, go ahead. Right here again. It's just too much motion. So what we're doing on this cuff, as I am using this hand, it's a little bit of a brush back to me, as if I was actually, looks like a Tai Chi motion actually. I'm actually pulling, as if I'm pulling some water back into my chest in this little small circular motion. Describe the circle. Some of you heard me repeat that on a previous DVD many times, and Dave behind the camera will never let me forget it. Thank you, Dave. So he throws that out right in here. Describe that circle, right? Small brush, back into position, but it's a small motion. Notice I just did the incorrect one. I want you to pick them out. Watch this. Correct, correct, incorrect. Too much of a slap across. Brush, because this little brushing right here brings my hand back into position instead of across and opens up that line. Now, Corey and I will trade a couple of these. I'll throw that jab, cuff it, bang. You got to resist the temptation to say bang in every punch. It's about pow. Too much Batman. I'm an old man. I saw this show when it was on. There you go. Okay, we get the idea. The next one we're going to look at is the slip. We've got the inside slip, the outside slip. We'll do the inside first. Keep in mind when you're slipping, you're going to notice this material. Hey, Mark, where's the bob and weave? Well, we talk about that in one of our books, the Boxing Mastery book. Bob and weave can work in straight boxing because they don't have to worry about the knee coming out the middle. For this material, we're assuming that you're an NHB player or you're working for the street. Bob and weave can get you it's too much of an extreme bend. The knee can be coming out, sprawl, snap down, or
out.
Chancery it up. It's bad news. So the slip, actually what you're going to be thinking about doing is taking your head pretty much just one head length, but you actually get a little bit of a forward motion at the same time. So whenever I'm slipping off to my inside, which is towards my chest, I think about this shoulder going towards this knee. And I'm not going to make this extreme bend. It's just where I'm thinking about the motion going to. If I just think about these two meeting, but I'm only going to be moving about 8 inches, that would be the slip to the inside. And then the reverse of that to go to the outside, this shoulder to this knee, moving towards my back, the outside of my body, about 8 inches. So if you just think about moving towards the opposite shoulder to the opposite knee, you kind of have the concept of the slip. Now, when you're doing these in drill, you're going to have to take them slow to kind of get the main groove of them down. Then after, when you really throw them in the fight, lots of times they look more chancy. They kind of come out without... a lot of the form gets lost on them because a slip's a real hard motion to pull off.
The speed steps up so much too.
You got to be a crafty boxer. To be honest with you, that's not necessarily my style. I'm more of a show love, try and get on the inside. These work really well for Corey, so probably going to have him demonstrate them so you get a better view of them. So if he's going to be slipping to the inside of my jab, so if I'm throwing this jab, he's got to move to the inside of my body. He's going here. So nice and slow. Here. Notice I didn't say bang yet, except for that time right there. It's right on the inside of it. Now, inside slips work, and they're beautiful. Can you see one structural problem with them, or tactical problem with them? He's coming to the inside, which means he's coming to this hand. This is actually a power hand because it's coming off the rear of the body. It doesn't mean you get rid of the slip. Just keep in mind that if you are going to slip, the outside is usually always preferable, but again, you never have a choice. You don't know where you're going to be, how you're going to get caught. So let's do this with the back of the camera so you can slip to the inside. I'm going for the nose. We're down, 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 here. There, get the idea. Now we're going to do a couple where he slips on the outside again. He's taking this shoulder to this knee, outside of my shot, outside the shot. And you see he's away from my power hand. Nicely done. Let's move it in a little bit. Here, let's go back to the camera. There we go. Outside. Now let's have him do it. Keep the back of the camera for a moment, please, sir. Inside, outside, just alternate, all right? Okay. And you see the small motion he's making? Give a couple with it exaggerated like you see in a bob and weave. All right, take a look at it. Down. That's too much motion. Too much right there. From the front, you can see as we were talking, if I'm bobbing and weaving, knee, the center, we can all see that. Snap down, chancery. Bad, 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 bad news. So again, watch Corey's small motion inside and outside. Here. This knee is going to have a hard time finding a place to bite at this point. And also notice he's immediately coming back to position. He doesn't slip and stay down. In boxing, you can get away with this to some degree. You can slip down from things and look around, come back up. For the game we're talking about, you don't have time for it. Remember that earlier rule, don't violate it. Right back into position. There you go. That one touched a tiny bit, didn't it?
Okay, as long as it doesn't hurt.
That's what you got. Hey, keep in mind when you're doing these rules, these games, a basic rule, if a punch hits you from about the eyebrow level circumference around your head, that's okay.
You're going to get hit, for sure.
Yeah, you're playing the inside game, and we should be saying that up front, but we forget to say it. Some people think every time they get hit, you see them go, oh man, I suck at this. No, if you're covered up, we're getting hit through here. That doesn't mean we're aiming for them. We're not trying to let yourself get hit. It's okay. There's not a lot of damage that's going to come from that unless a cut does come in. So don't think you're totally invulnerable at that point. After the slip, let's take a look at another head motion thing, which is the pull. It's pretty much just like you see in the long rhythm. We've just got one head length back and then right back into position. So again, watch Corey, push back. Like that. So it pretty much looks like a slip to the rear, except the terminology we're going to be using is the pull. And you see he's coming right back to position, because if he stayed at the rear of the pull, he's violating the rule about don't lean away from punches. That's too far back. There's not much he can do on this. And I'm back on top, and we're shooting. So again, pull, 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 pull. You can combine that together. You can take any of these concepts we're giving to you and recombine them in a myriad of drills, but along the way, rather than give you tons of combination drills at the end of this material, which would make this thing go on forever, occasionally I'll start talking about some ideas where you can be slipping some of your own ideas in there as well. I'm going to throw 3 jabs. Corey's going to slip inside, outside, and then pull. So, 1, 2, 3. Get the idea. And again. And again. You get the idea. So the whole time, he's never had to use his hands yet on this one, just moving around the body. Now these are very attractive things to learn, but again, you got to be crafty, you got to be a slippery boxer, and you're usually going to be able to find out where you are in the mix after 2-3 months of playing the game.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean don't practice these because you have no idea where they're going to come into play. Directly after the pull, we're going to have the cross hand parry on here. We talked about so far when we have used the hand, it has been that rear hand because we talked about this one being 80% of the defensive play. We are going to use the lead hand one on this one. So when the jab comes in, we're going to use that same brushing principle we did on the cuff with this lead hand cross glove. I'm brushing and bringing this hand back to the chest. Again, not taking it across, not taking it down. Brush, small little Tai Chi motion. And for Dave to describe the circle, so it comes in, little brush here, brush. And again, this is not the preference because we're not able to use this lead hand as an immediate return until we overcome the inertia of using this one as a defensive motion first. Okay, let's trade a few of those. I'll throw in here first. One last concept, well, I'm sorry, there's 2. I said one last. We'll talk about the shoulder block on this. Now, the shoulder block, when the jab comes in, we're basically just putting the shoulder up and into it. Now, this depends that your body's already in this position. We're not going to say, he's throwing this jab and I've got time to go all the way to here. Sometimes you've thrown something and you've found yourself in a low position. There's not much to do at this point except roll this over. Now, to do a shoulder block, take this lead hand, lay it across your liver, not any lower, because usually if a body shot is being followed up, people are looking for the liver shot. You can actually, you can build up your abs enough to kind of take this thing in the stomach. The liver is what you're worried about. You can take this lead shoulder up, keep your chin down, and still keep this rear hand on your body. And again, we're talking about we're in a low position. So when we do this as a drill, we're not going to start here, try and drop to it. We're going to assume we were already in a low relationship whenever this punch comes in. So when he throws that jab, bam, put the shoulder up. Keep in mind, he's not punching my shoulder. He's looking for the jaw or the nose, so I have to direct this in line, so straight on. I'm not just going, I'm not standing here and he's punching over here, putting this right in the path of the shot. So it throws. And you see me using this rear hand for safety as it comes in. I'm not trusting that shoulder block only, I want this hand up. All right, so the same thing, Corey's in a down relationship. I'm gonna throw it for you. I'm looking for his chin. You get the idea. You see how that can happen if I throw a sway jab immediately after that? We can start throwing back and forth. I'll throw the jab, and I'm down. He throws from there. You see a lot of boxers these days throwing from this low relationship. We don't recommend it for you. It's okay in some boxing, but to get an idea of how to throw a jab from low up to high. I'm going to throw back at you, return. And you see how we're each ducking this in the way of it. We're just not standing there assuming our partner's doing us the favor of punching the shit out of our deltoid for 3 rounds. Now, the last one of the high jab, which is just the step back. This is basically getting the entire body away from your opponent. You're going to dig in with the ball of your foot on the lead foot into the mat and just step straight back. From here, back. Now notice while we're doing this, we're trying to keep an even plane. We're trying to resist the urge to step and move back. This is bad. Also get the, resist the urge to hop. Now I'm exaggerating right here. This motion right here, you see this a lot when you tell them to step back. It's up and back, or their body goes up and back. It's just from here to here. Here, dig in, shove, and back. So I'm going to throw some at Corey. He's step back, throw it again. I'm already got a range. Okay, Okay, you got the idea. Several ways to stop up that jab. Keep in mind, we're going to show you many cases, several ideas to stop up a particular technique. This material goes on, some like elbows, we only have a few. The reason we give you so many, because in boxing, your hands can be in so many different relationships, you're never quite sure where your hands are going to be. And when you're doing defense, for example, against a jab, you can't have Corey throw a jab and you don't go, this one, this one, oh yeah, that's this one right here. You don't have time for that shit. You've got to drill them all so when it does come in, you freeform to see which one feels correct at that particular time. So break them all up, and then after you've learned all these jab defenses, then go for a freeform drill where your partner's just throwing jabs left and right, and your job is to use any of those. You're going to try and fake position. You've got headgear on. He's trying to get that jab in and bust your nose if you can. Let's take a look at some high cross defenses. We've worked with the high jab. We're going to get to the low jab stuff. Working the cross. So we got that rear hand coming in. These are all going to look familiar to you. Corey's excited, ready to go. The first we're going to have is whenever he throws that cross out there, we're going to have a cuff. I want you to notice something first on this. Some people have asked me, why have you not used a catch against a cross? Problem is, if he's aiming straight from a nose, this is a more powerful shot. He's using his rear hand, he's got his entire body turning this whole thing. I can use a catch, but if he throws it, chances are it still has a little bit of blowback into me and still catches me in the face. So it's possible to catch them if you kind of move to the outside, but if you can move to the outside of it, you didn't have any reason to catch it in the first place. So hopefully that addresses that. When he throws in that high cross, we're going to use that same cuffing we used earlier. Again, use that little small brushing it back to your chest, describe the circle. He throws that cross in. There's the shot. Again, I can't exaggerate it. I can't be all the way across in this position. Since we're in this relationship, I'll throw the cross. It'll be easier to read it from your side. So here, slow it, here. That's how he brings that hand right back in. Back in, up to tempo. Return.
Sorry about that.
You see how we're both shelling up because we have enough respect for each other. You should always have that for your partner, because I know if I let the slightest little thing down, even the context of a drill, even on this video shoot, Corey would love nothing more than to smack me, and I'll smack him back. I mean, if he drops his hands at the same time. That's just the way we play. It's the way you should be playing at the same time. Also against the cross, come in, we just use that cuff. You can also use a cover or a block. When the cross is coming in, let me turn this for just a moment, Corey. This is coming in. It's one of those counterintuitive things. And a lot of people have asked me from the extreme boxing, they see the cover where we use the entire 16-ounce boxing glove, put that up over the ear, and we allow that shot to be absorbed by the glove. And people think, oh, you can't do this in the street, you can't do this with the small gloves. You go, yeah, you can. We'll do it here in just a few moments so you can see what's going on. But a few problems to address. I see lots of people still doing a cover where they take their elbow all the way up. So he throws this cross in, and they have the elbow up at the same time. They're assuming they know where that shot is. Yeah, in the context of the drill, I just told Corey, throw this high cross for me. But when you're really fighting, I don't know what I see this hand teeing off, so I got to cover and keep this elbow down to some degree. If I've got it all the way up here, I'm all crunchy right here at this particular time. Got to keep it in. I can't be up, and I don't want the elbow to the outside, because we see if the elbow's the outside, I still left this chin line open, let alone an uppercut or a second shot coming in from him off of his lead hand. So, I'm going to throw it real slow. I'm going to throw the cross. He's going to cover. And when he throws it, he opens up the hand, spider webs over the ear. He doesn't leave this like a fist. He wants maximum coverage. So we're here, here, here. Notice he's bending his knees at the same time because your legs act as a shock absorber. If you're trying to stay upright with these things, which don't do, because either you fall back, or actually, since you have no shock absorbing out of that, you still feel a big jolt to the body.
For me, it varies with the height of the person I'm boxing.
Yeah.
So
you're talking about being able to stay up?
Being able to bend my knees or just take it without using much of my legs.
Where do you find you use the difference on it?
With a shorter guy, I can normally just kind of
because he's having to do the punch up on it?
Somebody taller than me, I have to come down with a little bit.
Good point. Follow what the man is saying. Let's do this a little. I'm going to throw in here. Bam. You're going to throw back. Here. Here. You notice we picked it up a little because the people who said you can't pick them off with these small gloves, hopefully you see, go ahead, holy shit, no problem.
You're fighting. I mean, what do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, we're not, you feel the impact there. There's going to be a little bit of a jolt, but you're going to go, your head's fine, your arms are fine, and you're training a real sport. I mean, we're not playing touch football or just contact karate or anything like that. We're trying to learn some NHP stuff or get some street skills down. Now, just as we did the slips with the jab, you got your inside slip and your outside slip with the cross. So we know if Corey slips towards this hand or towards his chest, he's slipping inside against that cross. If he takes his body to the outside, that's an outside slip. We've already got that terminology down. Here's a couple of slow-mo. Well, our slow-mo, not through the expediencies of technology doing it for us. Just slip inside and outside. Now, at the same time, you see if he's slipping to the inside, let's look at this. He slips to the inside. This is not as good a choice as slipping to the outside because he's coming into a shovel hook, an uppercut, or a standard hook. There's still slipping inside has its place, but keep in mind, out of the two, outside's the safer bet. A couple more. There, you get the idea on that. Also, just where we had the pull, as with the jab, same thing here. I throw the cross, he's got to pull away from it. Now, it's seldom you're going to see anyone leading with the cross, so chances are you've had something move from the jab, and the cross is coming in afterwards. But right now, we're just isolating one shot. Let's bring it in a little bit. Right here. And let's see, we take a look. We also have the cross arm when we're using the cross. So when this cross is coming in, bang, I've parried with this lead hand already. Now I can use this hand to parry against it. Notice when we threw this, we violated the first little parry we did was using the lead hand. Some degree violated the 80-20 rule. Well, that was 20% up front. This time we got the rear hand, do the exact same little cuffing motion. Now, in case you're wondering why we didn't use this one first in this little piece of crossing material, because it's got a scarier feel to it. That cross is coming in. This is a more powerful punch. I'd rather be batting this thing across where he's giving me his outside line as opposed to here where I might be aiding him with some counter revolution, bringing in this shot. It still has its place. It's worth practicing, but you got to keep in mind, tactically, you might have set this guy up for something. So again, let's have this make sense. This comes in. I've taken him to the outside line. This is a better shot for me, but if I take him to here, ooh, that might be over the top. But we still have still has its place. So he's throwing that cross here, 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 here. And I will not lie to you. That's a scarier shot to see coming in. Work it, but if I use that one out of 50 rounds of boxing, it might come up once or twice.
Each one has its place.
You
gotta
got
have them all.
You got it. We've used the roll against the jab. The roll is even more important against the cross because the cross is a more powerful shot. Sometimes you're going to put a bigger body block in front of it. Same thing. Duck that chin, cover the liver. One reason you're going to really cover the liver on this one because you'll see a natural follow-up from this cross is really when I bang the body right here. I mean, you're just in a perfect position. If I throw it, you're right here. If he's covered up in the liver, life's pretty good for him right now. So I'm going to throw a few light. Bang. Looking for the chin. Here, here. You return some now. Back and forth. Oh, go ahead. Rocky 3 ending. That's it. Okay, get the idea on that one. One more thing on the cross, just like we did in the jab, the step back. Just get your entire body out of there. Dig in with the ball of the lead foot. Straight back, no hopping. Throw some crosses. And again, this is isolation. Looks a little unrealistic because I'm leading with the cross. So I'll be stepping in to lunge with it so he's got something to lead from. So we're here. There you go. You get the idea on that. So you've got high cross defense. Almost like just a mirror image of your high jab defense. Then you're going to start taking those drills. You do your high jab defense, start combining it with those two, so you're picking off some of this headhunter stuff. We take a look at some defenses for the high lead hook. The defensive of the high lead hook are all the same thing you'd be doing for the rear high hook as well. We're going to stay with the lead hook right now because that's primarily the punch you're going to see. The rear hook is basically a haymaker. It's easier to read coming in. If you just take any of these things we're showing off the lead hook, they're going to apply it on the other side. Now on the high lead hook, this is a very powerful punch. This is coming in just so we used to cover against the cross whenever it's coming in, putting both hands up over the head, keeping the elbow to the inside. We do the same thing against the hook. Now we can't stay upright with this thing because this is a powerful punch. This is coming in, so slowly as Corey's bringing that in, we cover up to right here. Got to use my knees as a shock absorber. So he throws it in, a little bit of a bend here, and notice, I want you to watch the elbow a few times. Whenever I'm going to give you about 3 in a row where I'm putting the elbow in bad position, and then explain why, and then we're going to start putting these things back down the proper position. He throws, elbow's too high. It's assuming I know it's the head, or the elbow's out too much. Horrible idea. So the elbow's got to be down, 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 and bending at the knees. Now we're going to trade a little bit on this, just back and forth on it. We're not hitting all out because these are hooks and they still get a little bit of rock to the head. You go hit there first. Get the idea. I probably should tell you before I stop that you're going to give me one right in the teeth.
No.
Yeah, you'd love to.
I don't want to hurt you.
Also against the hook, we've got, we can use the duck. Now keep in mind when we're talking about a duck, you can just go straight down away from it. Keep in mind we're not ever leaning forward. Again, we're going into that knee territory, snap downs, chanceries. The duck's got a specific path you're going to travel. You're going to be thinking about taking your body kind of like 45 and down at this position as that hook's coming in. So take a look at this as, we'll go to this side. I'll throw the hook, it's the lead, of course coming 45 and down. Right here. Here. Because if you go straight down on this, he's just changed his elevation, but he hasn't changed his range, and my next shot can be something right over the top. By coming into me a little bit, he's changed up what my arsenal is going to be. I'm going to have to pull back to position to refire. So, down, down, down. Now, if he wants to get increasingly close with it on the range, you can reverse that V, come up at a 45. You can go down to 45 and right back up, as if he was going to put a headbutt into my chin. So here, right back up. So that way you can get right on the inside of the fight. Now the duck is a very useful position, defensive tool for people who get on the inside fight and realize they've got someone who plays the inside game a little bit better than they do, and you don't necessarily feel like backing out and restarting this whole game. You try to get it inside of the clinch, or just a little bit tighter inside so you can shovel hook on the ribs.
Uppercuts, headbutts.
There you go. Like that's what the headbutt's there purposely for. I got the hand in the way in case he starts coming up with any kind of velocity on it. A couple more with the duck. I'll throw a little bit faster. Get the idea. Kind of ducking 45 down and back up. If he's just going straight down the whole time, keep in mind he just changed the elevation, but he's still in my perfect punching range. He's got to switch that off. It's one of the mistakes people make with Ali all the time. They would just get low on his punch. He's up here and just picking him off in the same spot. He's just basically punching up and down a pole at that time. So moving in changes the game a little bit. Also out of the duck, after the duck, we got the pull. We pull with everything else. You can pull the same thing with the hooks. And I throw this lead hook, Corey just went head length away. Bam, back and away. Same thing. We used a cross glove and some of these other ideas. We're using that cuff to bring back to the chest. This looks like that. It's different. It's actually a combination of the little bit of the cuffing and a little bit of the catch where we bring our hand out in this horizontal position. So if Corey's throwing this lead hook, I'm going to have this delivered into the palm of my hand. Now, obviously, he's not punching it, my hand in front of my face. We're just doing that right now to show you there's the motion. So as that's coming in, I actually give a little bit of a slap into this thing, a little bit of a slap and a tiny bit up, just like we did on that the jab. Not directly into it because he can still be double hooking on me. He can throw this one and hook again, bang, bang, or he could be here. This is coming in on top because if I just hit this hook, I'm just throwing his body back, triggering this thing off. Can we see that? So it's like bang, bang. No good. So a little bit of an up motion. All right, so as it's coming in, he's looking here, so I got to fade back a little bit and can we see where that's coming in right through here? One more time. You notice as safety, I'm also bringing this arm up and away as a cover because scared shitless of getting caught with a hook whenever
Good
one's
puncher's
coming.
throwing multiples too.
You got it. I don't know what the hell he's going to do because you're a good puncher. And also, even if you got someone you think's a little green or a rookie to the game, people who are new people are unorthodox. You have no idea what they're going to throw. We used to educated people, oh, they're going to open with a jab, and all of a sudden this guy's coming in and through this wild uppercut. Chances are you're going to stop that because it's telegraphed, but it's just not a move that you expect really to see coming at you right off the bat. Okay, we got that cross glove catch against the hook. And last but not least, let's take a look at that step back again. Dig in with the lead foot and drive back. I'll throw a couple of these hooks. He's just going to move away from it. I'm throwing here. Now, where these really come into play, if you got someone throwing one of those Floyd Patterson kangaroo hooks, if we're in tight right here, not necessarily got the time to drive the whole body back. But we're in this position, and some people, if they can't make their jab work, they're being kept off, they'll get a little bit of a crouch sometime. If you see that crouch come in and a little bit of this hand dip down, chances are you see this hand. There you go. So it's... We've just taken a look at some of the defenses of the high lead hook. You can do the same things with the rear hook. We're just going to mirror image all these ideas. The same cover, you got the cross gloves, you got the step back. We're not showing them to you right now because one, the rear hook's not necessarily an educated shot, it's more of a finisher shot. We're not saying it doesn't happen, it does happen, but it's going to be the exact same thing, just reversed on the other side, so we're not going to burn your tape time with that. We take a look at some uppercut defenses now. We're going to show defenses work for both the lead and the rear uppercut. You're not going to really be able to equate between the two, differentiate between the two when you're in tight because these are close-in punches. Keep in mind, we discussed on extreme boxing where most uppercuts probably aiming at the liver but can travel up to the chin. If you've got good covering, you're not going to have to try and figure out what level an uppercut is. You're just going to assume all of them are coming at the liver. If you get your chin stuck out, you might get caught with it, but that was your fault because you're not paying attention to the rules to begin with. Now, one of the best ways, easiest ways to cover against an uppercut, we're assuming we're already in tight and you're not going to try and use quick hand speed on it, is just kind of use your forearm block. So when we're closed up here, if I'm throwing an uppercut off the rear so we can see it easier, Corey just kind of turns his arm a little bit and receives it either off the forearm or a little bit of the V of both bones together, the upper arm and the forearm at the same
Hopefully
time.
it'll hit my elbow.
Yeah, the elbow is also can come into play when you're wearing these NHB gloves. If you're taped up, wearing 16-ounce boxing gloves, not too bad on the hands, but this can be hell on you. But we're here, he covers up. Same thing off this, if I throw the lead one, he covers up. Now I'm doing this drill about 20 minutes because I like hitting Corey without getting hit back. See, but notice he's turning a little bit. He just doesn't stand here, and I'm not aiming at his arms. I want this spot. So he turns just enough to put this in front. But notice whenever he turns, don't get this exaggerated. Some people, you see this all the time, people turning all the way and exposing ribs and kidney on it. So if I'm looking for this shot, and he turns, same thing here, just enough. We can see that. Can you do a little bit up front? Imagine it coming in. It's all it's got to have.
I would much rather get hit in the ribs than in the stomach or the liver.
You got it. A couple more with that. Bang, bang. Go ahead and return some. So this is basically, keep going, an infighting drill because obviously the uppercut is an infighting shot. Notice we're not standing here. We're in that closed cage position. Thank you for having the goodness of your heart. Not catching while I'm talking there. You might see us cheat sometimes a little bit. If we see that elbow, some of us will cheat a little bit out here in the shovel because we're afraid of eating that elbow on the way up. If your opponent eats the elbow on the way up, that's just gravy. That's good for you at that time. Along after the forearm blocks, you do have glove blocks you can use. This assumes you had a little bit more time to read as it's coming in. If he's throwing this uppercut here, I will use the same side hand, his right arm, my right hand, to slap down into the shot. But I got to cover immediately. So he throws here, cover, back up. He throws, slap into the shot, slap. Now if I catch the fist, that'll work. If I catch the wrist, that'll work. Just anything to stop that coming in. A couple more, so we can see that coming in. Here. I'll do the same thing. You throw off this side, I'll throw off this one so we can see. Okay. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah. Little elbow on that one.
Felt that.
Okay, get the idea out of that. You got the forearm block, you got some glove blocking, and again, the glove blocking can be done with either side, just like you did with the elbows. You can also do a pull off of these. Notice the pull's not going to be the same thing since they're looking for the body. This little bit of a pull is not good enough, so you'll notice if they are going for the liver, you rocking back actually has that punch trouble just enough to make this miss. We're not assuming he's going for the chin. If he's going for the chin, it's going to work, but it can even be going for the liver, backing away. See the path that this thing's going to travel. And if you still feel better about putting a safety in it, throw a glove block on top, a few that way. But notice, right back into position each time. Notice when we're talking about on this negative motion, the recovery, we're not doing, well, we're doing it sometimes, I think, to the context of the drill. Throw again. Notice how I'm taking my time coming back. I'm back on my heels too long. It's always got to be here, back inside, back inside, back inside. And if you occasionally see us being a little lazy with some of the drills about returning, it's not the way we would do the entire drill. It's because Corey and I are getting so fixated on showing you what the actual hand motion is, as we discussed earlier. Negative motion, you got to return just as fast as that positive motion went out there. And the positive motion, of course, was the offensive shot. Also for the uppercut defense, actually it's the last one for the uppercut. We use the step back everywhere else. We're going to use it here. Dig in with the lead foot and leave. I'll throw some uppercuts. Well, it had to be in tight. Corey just decides that he doesn't want any more of this inside fight. Digs in and leaves. We're here. We're in tight. It actually helps to be touching. Here, all the way in. Bring it in, bring it in, bring it in. Okay, you get the idea. There's fewer choices for defense on the uppercut, but it's a really precise punch. It's coming up in this vertical fashion. It's pretty much the only punch that does this. And it's based on the body. If you just pretty much put those elbows in front of it, cheat out of position for a glove block, or you can, at the same time you're doing that, you pull, you step back, you're squared away. Take a look at defending the low jab that's coming in. Again, we've defended against some low shots with the uppercut. Now the jab, all the defenses we worked at the high level aren't necessarily going to work down here. Well, they're really not going to work at all because there's no sense in me having to squat down here and work all these things out. The slow jab's coming in. We can work with a few ideas. The first one is just the scoop. As he comes down low to throw this jab, I'm going to use this rear hand. So we were doing this cuffing before. We're going to hinge at the elbow. I'm not gating this thing out. Just come straight down, kind of pat it a little bit to the outside. So as that comes in, bam, right back into position. Boom, boom. Now it's actually a great follow-up off of this. People come in with a jab, and notice you have to drop low to throw it. This guy's just throwing straight down. There's not much on it. He's opened up this whole line. When someone comes in for a low shot, if they're not staying in here, and he continues, if he just stands up in front of you, he opens up all the shots that are just beautiful for you to have. Anyone that's throwing a low shot should be throwing in low and stepping out low, but fortunately most people don't do that. So when he throws it, you should always be thinking about re-teeing off with a jab. Remember, we're talking about as soon as you throw your defensive move, you want to trigger this right back out with your offense, and don't necessarily have to do that right now, but just keep it in your mind. Again, the low jab, scoop it, scoop, back to position, scoop, scoop. Also, we can block this thing out just like we do with the uppercut. We got the forearm blocks when he's throwing this in. He's looking for the liver. You just put a forearm in front of it. In this case, I'm using the rear forearm. It's here. Using the rear because I'd like to throw in the jab. It can be the lead one if that one happens to be in position, but I got to keep in mind if I use this one, I don't want to necessarily come off of this right into a jab because I'm in a weird crunch position. Throw in here, try and come back in with a cross. Preference would be the rear again, trying to stay with the 80-20 rule, but you can use either one. As we'll show here again. Rear, lead, rear, lead, right on the top. Pretty easy thing to do. Also, we've closed all these other punches out with a step back. Let's do the same thing here. He throws that low jab, just drive off, get away, off and away. Start coming back with things. You get the idea. Pretty easy stuff. Scoop it, forearm block it, or step back. That'll take care of that low jab. Now we're going to take a look at defending against this low cross. Now we've just taken a look at the low jab. The exact same material, just done slightly different. Whenever this cross comes in, I'll tell you what Corey's going to do at this time.
Okay.
He's going to use this lead hand to scoop to the outside. So we're going to violate the 80-20 rule in this position. And in this case, scoop to the outside. Scoop, scoop, scoop. Now, he can do the same thing with using the forearm blocks. He can use the lead forearm, because I'm looking for the liver, or use the rear forearm. Either one. Just go ahead and keep alternating a couple of times. Got the idea. He can also step back against these. If you can read me coming in with this low lunge, which is pretty easy to read that. The jab coming in, it's easier to get that one in because it's off the lead hand side, not shied.
Either one.
Decided to lisp on this one. What we can do though, I'm gonna get this big looping, lunging across. It's gonna step away. And you see what I'm saying about recovery. I'm throwing the punch, trying to stay low, step back before I come back out at the same time. So you've got your scoop, forearm lead, rear, there it is, step back, and that'll take care of that low jab, the low cross, just like you did with the low jab. Let's take a look at the countering the low hook. And there's only a couple of ideas here, and these are very, very similar to the uppercut, just fewer choices this time. If I throw a low lead hook or a rear hook can come into play, because we said opening with a high rear hook, not necessarily a good boxing idea, but low hooks are usually we're in this medium range or all the way in, so it could be on either side. Just going to do your forearm blocks. And again, we're not trying to put the forearm over here in front of it. You're kind of trying to take the punch on the V of the arm, the upper arm, in the forearm at the same time. You get the idea. Just like that. Blocking out that low hook. You notice he's got a little bit of a bend with it. Just try and stay stock still. He's not trying to be a statue with this thing, like this, trying to be a punching bag. He kind of moves. That even feels weird to stand there, doesn't it? So I'll throw two. Corey will throw back. Go ahead and put a little stink on it. Only other choice we're going to give you on these low hooks, because these things can come in so much faster than the uppercuts. You don't want to try and put a glove block on top of this. You're going to get nailed. Also notice we're keeping our hands up the whole time because we could be throwing here. The guy could be double hooking, so you see us keep coming back to this kind of covered position. Just use that same step back you're using everything else. As that hook's coming in, drive off that ball of the lead foot, and gone. I'll just keep throwing for you. Get the idea. We've done this enough. You already know what's going on at this point. 2 ideas, the low hook, forearm block, step back. Okay, we're going to take a look at using a little bit of footwork mobility as a defensive tool right now. The concept we're going to work with is pivoting. Now, when you think of the pivot, what you're going to be wanting to do is think about the ball of the lead foot is our access point. The rest of your body is the door, so let's say the ball of the lead foot is going to be the hinge at this point. If I'm moving towards my chest, this is moving to the inside. Now, basically, I've left this lead foot planted. I am, pivoting on it. I'm sliding on it, moving to the inside. If I step towards my back, that is pivoting to the outside. So you've got this inside motion, outside motion. Now, we're using this to get out of the way of a shot, so it's not going to have this lazy look I'm giving it right now. You might have to use a little bit of ballistic inertia with the step, or even going back, but the idea is the rear foot's doing the movement, the lead foot just stays in that one pivot point. Now, just a couple of ideas where you can use this. If I'm throwing this cross into Corey, it's a good idea for him to pivot on the outside away from this thing. We'll take it nice and slow, pivot and away from it. Let's put the back on, we'll move it around a few times. Pivot on the outside and away. Pivot on the outside. You see, he starts looking more like a slick boxer at this point because before, well, up to this point, we've been standing still to some degree, using the hands only for the defensive ideas. But you got to keep in mind the whole body's in motion. Stancing shouldn't be just a static thing. Now let's say I throw this jab, he can start pivoting off to his inside. His inside's going to my outside, which is to my back. Moves to the inside. Try and give me a little bit more of a shift in. I know it's tough to go inside on it. There we go. Which puts him right on my back for kidney shots or just banging the ribs or bringing the rear hook across on top of my head, right behind the ear, and the brachial plexus. You see the craft starts looking a little bit more slippery, more like a science, because you got the man moving around. Going back to the cross, he goes, pivots to the outside, and away. You get the idea. Get more of an alive feel when we start playing the game this way. If you start drilling this way, putting the previous tools we had to this point on top of it, game gets a lot more slick, more realistic, more alive, more like a true sparring match, even in the midst of the drills at that point. So pivoting, just your only choice is inside and outside. Isolate them like we just did, where you're throwing the punches, having your partner move. You start having them move, and he starts returning fire on you, give you some counter punching. Here's another footwork idea to play with. It's called shifting. There's an offensive shift and a defensive shift, and really this is just a change in stance leads. That's all there is to it. If I take, right now, I'm in a right lead forward, and Corey's the same thing. We both fight southpaw. And if I decide at one point he's moving into me, I can use a step back, I can pivot, I can move laterally, I can shuffle off the side, I can cut an angle, but sometimes the quickest thing to do is just to step away from him. And now the step back is quick, but the shift can be faster, and this is nothing more than just reversing my stance leads. We're not talking about jumping in place, because this really doesn't carry me away from the battle. I'm taking the lead foot, I'm stepping right back to the rear position, and I'm restarting my stance with my hands in proper guard position. So if I'm here, I move from here to here. From straight on the camera, up in good position, back to good position. And where we're going to be using this is someone's coming in on top of you, same thing like we'd be using it in a step back. Someone's got a lunging attack going on, you're just trying to get the hell out of dodge at this point. We'll move you in a little bit, I'll lunge at you and use that shift step. Notice his lead foot, we'll switch to the back, we got then the left foot's in the rear position,
I'm
in the front
coming to you.
position. I'm going to you,
All right.
ready? And you notice this can be used not just on the punches. We've been using the boxing as the common denominator on the offense so far. We'll be doing more attacks with kicks and knees and such, but he can shift away from my punching. He can shift away from this kicking position. It doesn't matter what kind of kick I'm using, he can shift away from these things. And this is going to work. You don't have to use the shift nearly as much if you're just playing a straight boxing match. Unless you're just dancing out and away, you're a good long-range fighter, you're trying to frustrate. The shift's very useful against someone who's got some good kicking skills that you respect, and you're trying to get a beat on which angle he's primarily throwing these things at. Now, the offensive shift is actually bringing you into your opponent. We're not covering that here because, like we said, this is all about defensive skills, trying to make sure you are not getting hit, or at least not getting hit that much, because it was the old fighter's maxim, fighters get hit, good fighters don't get hit as much, and that's the key. We're going to address being caught on the ropes. Its first rule about being caught on the ropes is don't get there. You want to exercise good ring generalship, which usually means staying to the center of the ring, whether you're playing an octagon or even the street. You're trying to keep your back away from any sort of vertical surface at all times. At the same time, you're trying to manipulate your opponent with footwork or your attack to get him where he's backed up against something. Whether it's a cage wall, it could be, I guess, a standard brick wall, or it can be ring ropes. The idea is to always be aware of where you are within the ring or wherever your combat environment is. And it's best to be moving out of the way before you even get backed up into it. We're going to give you a few ideas to keep in mind. If you're working with ring ropes, which we don't have right here, what you would want to do is whenever you're backing up, as soon as you feel the bottom strand of rope on the back of your rear leg, on your calf of the rear leg, it's time to move immediately. Don't allow yourself to move back, think you're going to be Ali and rope it up. Remember, he had to set those ropes at be fairly slack to be able to pull off what he was doing. But as soon as you feel that rope, the bottom strand of the calf, move, get out of there. Preferably move before that, but this is your last resort at that time. If it's a cage wall, when you feel your heel hit the bottom of the cage, or if you feel your heel hit the brick wall, if we're talking a street environment, it hits the curb, it's time to move at that time. But it's best to have an awareness of where you are before you even get to that extreme example and be moving ahead of time. Now, if you have an awareness of where you are at all times, every time I'm backing Corey up, he would want to, instead of letting me back his heel into the wall, he's going to want to start moving laterally. In this case, to make sure we have some space, he'll probably be moving off to my left more often than not. He's going to move laterally, and he's going to punch out while he's moving. He's just not going to start sidestepping only. He's going to start stepping, throwing jab as he moves to kind of get my attention away from him, or using the jab as a post to prevent me from coming in. So if we just lightly, if I move into him, he's going to start sidestepping and jabbing, throwing combinations immediately, because he has an idea of where he's at any given time. Now, there are a few other drills beyond just this main concept of thinking about sidestepping and moving out. Some of them are named after fighters because they used them to a large degree. Some of them aren't. We do have an Archie Moore drill where he was really good. Archie Moore, the Mongoose nickname. Whenever he was being back toward the ropes, before he got there, he would go in the offensive, and it's just like when we did before in the infighting with the shelling up. He would close up and get his head on the chest so he could pressure you just enough so he could start sidestepping and get to the outside. So if he knows he's being moved, where he's being moved back, come in, he shells up, puts that head, and starts moving. That's all there is to it. We're going to do some of this light punching because I'm talking. I don't want to get caught in the mouth. We're not wearing mouthpieces right now, but as I move him back, all there is to it. He wants to realize, get the head of the chest and start moving. So we're here and moving around. His main goal, though, is to get his back away from the ring ropes, away from the wall. What you've also got, what we already discussed, is doing the sidestep and get away. Well, sometimes the attack can be coming on so fast, the sidestep isn't enough. You might have to take a retreating step first. That retreating step could just be doing a step back like we've done in the other material, or it can actually be doing a shift stance. All that matters is just doing retreating, and then side step. You can jab afterwards. You're not going to try and throw a punch while you're moving backwards because there's going to be very little stink on it at that time. So as I'm coming in, retreats enough to move. Retreats and side steps. And he's out. Another drill is called the Jersey Joe Walcott drill. What he's going to do here is he's going to turn to his inside, which actually is coming off to my outside. He turns to his inside and then does the step out. So slowly, kind of like almost a dance step, as we move back, he feels his heel hit that wall, steps to the inside, and then steps out and away. He can throw those jabs again on the way out. Slowly, the heel hits, inside, and away. Again, inside, and away. You see, a lot of these ideas have less to do with actually doing your defensive arsenal, a little bit more about the mobility and the footwork. Material that would probably be better served on extreme boxing, but it still serves itself well in this particular armor-plated curriculum. Away. Now, the last one we're going to use is the Jim Jeffries crouch cover. Now, we don't have to use the whole Jim Jeffries crouch. Was kind of somewhat curious. It's similar to the Archie Moore where he had his head on the chest, but here he's not really getting the head on the chest. He hasn't found the room for it. We do have him crammed all the way back. This is where we are addressing. We are back here, but you notice what he's trying to do is keep his hips off the wall. He's got his heel down here, and if he does get a hip on the wall, it's going to be one hip, the rear one. He doesn't want to get caught flat back here. He's going to crouch just enough to either put the head in or just enough to kind of post into me with his body so I can't flatten him out. And once he has that, then he's going to look to wheel to either side he can get off. He might have a problem wheeling this direction because his foot is planted, so he might kind of bounce off the wall with his ass, kind of push into it a little bit, and then step this direction or push into it and wheel to my outside. So again, when we're using this Jeffries drill, we're already here. So I'm throwing, and he punches into me with the shoulder and hitting his ass off the wall and moves away. So there you go. I think you basically get the idea. If you got some good ring generalship, staying to the center, knowing where you're at, moving laterally before it comes time, punching on the way out, you won't necessarily need these drills, but then again, it's a fail-safe. Need them all, work all four, but primarily keep to the center. Even before you start the fight, have an awareness of where you are, where your opponent is, and where the vertical environment is. And you probably won't need these nearly as much, but still, train them all the same. We're going to talk about shelling up now. We've talked about using stone walls and covers and all sorts of different ways to pick off the boxing arsenal. Now, sometimes you just get in trouble. And we've talked about one of the previous rules is sometimes you got to step back, get set, and get back in that fight. Sometimes if you've got no room to step back and you're still realizing this guy's getting the better of you, the shell up is nothing more than crunch everything down. Keep those shoulders up, keep the chin down, crunch down at the torso as well, so your ribs are giving as much coverage as you can from your elbows. Try and crunch your elbows to your forearms to the inside to try and cover up the liver. And you're trying to cover up the head at the same time. Now, this can't stay like this. Of course, just throwing some light punches on me, and I'm letting him treat me like a punching bag. This isn't really shelling up. I mean, yes, I have shelled up, but I pretty much said to him, I will stay still and you do whatever you need to do.
Kind of like you just closed your eyes and you're getting your ass kicked.
That's pretty much it. I've gone fetal on this guy without actually turning my back to him. So if I haven't realized that I can shift stance or I don't have the room to get away from him, to really shell up properly, you have to realize that punches take room. I mean, a good hook, more space it has, the better off we are. A good cross, even a good uppercut. So if I think about shelling up and putting my head on his chest, this cuts off a little bit of room, and I can actually use a little bit of forward momentum to make him have to punch either from on his heels or actually from punching from stepping, going from retreat, which is a tough thing to do. It can be done, but it's very tough. Now, once I've done that, I can decide whether I can get set, start throwing back, or decide we're going to a clinch game, a takedown game, whatever at that point. But again, this isn't just shelling up, staying right here. He's padding off and stuff. I've got to be able to get the head on the chest and move in. Whenever I'm moving in, though, notice that I'm not dropping low. I don't put my head on his chest, but it's going from here to here, which opens me up to the uppercuts, the knees, back in this, the snap downs, the head chanceries. You got to shell and put the forehead here, not the top of the head. So you've got to go into it. So notice he's opening up his hands right now. We're being kind with this. So I shell up, covers. You got to look. You get on the inside. Now this is shelling up. Now we'll reverse it. I will cuff on Corey. He's coming to the inside. It takes a lot of it off. I return to him. And again. Get the idea. As soon as you come in and get that head on, start moving backwards, those punches start losing a whole lot of the stink.
Right, there's no space.
You got it. You got to punches really do have to have the room. Even if you're thinking about, aren't you vulnerable to knees? We're going to be covering that later. If you got your hands up anyway, you're making the clinching for the knees really tough. A good knee clinch is going to have to be to the inside. So we're talking about staying covered up in this position and constantly driving forward with the head. So shell up, not just covering, but the forehead, and start driving back.